my name is Megan. I'm a Psychology 1011 student with Monash, and for assignment 1 we were tasked with creating an oral presentation. My topic is the effects of Ritalin, a brand name stimulant of methylphenidate, and how it impacts the working memory in children with ADHD. As stated by the National Health Service in 2021, it is believed that taking methylphenidate increases the amount of brain activity and dopamine in the brain, which causes an increase in cognitive functions. This includes choice impulsivity, focus, and working memory. So it is believed that if children are to take a form of methylphenidate, that then their working memory will perform better in tests as they are able to focus better, and this will continue until they stop taking said medication, as then their brain is not receiving the extra focus and dopamine. So the first study we're going to look at is by Barbara D'Aleo and colleagues from 2022. This was a study that tested the working memory and attention of children before taking methylphenidate and after one application of the medication. To test this, what they did was they showed children an image which contained blue boxes somewhere on it, and then showed them another image, and the children were required to indicate whether the boxes were in the same spot or if they had been moved from the image beforehand. If they were doing well, they did increase the difficulty and get children to indicate whether the boxes had moved from 2 images prior instead of the previous image. All the children in this study were in an age range of 9 to 12 and had a baseline IQ of 80. The participants were mostly boys at 87.5%, and there was nothing mentioned about the other factors such as race or home life. We can see that just after one administration of the methylphenidate, that the cognitive functions of the children began to improve. For working memory specifically, we can see that the accuracy has increased between the first lot of answers and the second lot of answers, which leads us to believe that methylphenidate is in fact a working factor to creating a better working memory within these children. They did also mention in this study that they believe it might correlate to their age and severity of symptoms, and it worked better on those that were younger. For the second study, we will be looking at one done by Molini, Campers, and colleagues in 2022, in which they tested 3 different cognitive abilities of the children, which were working memory, time perception, and choice impulsivity, though we will be only focusing on the working memory for this task. The way this experiment was conducted was they had a group of 48 children split into 2. One group received placebo medication, and then one group began receiving an actual dose of methylphenidate. To test the working memory in the children, they showed a display of 3 numbers and 1 letter. The letter was either located at the second or third spot to reduce the amount of confusion, and then the children were asked to relay the sequence of the numbers in order, followed by the letter that they had seen, and the accuracy would show how well their memory was working. All the children in this study were in the age range of 7 to 12, and they all had their IQs tested and were within the range of 98, give or take. Most of the participants were boys again at 80%, and they were likely to be Hispanic or Caucasian, with only 17.1% of the participants identifying as another race, such as Black, Asian, or mixed. So this study was based on many like it beforehand, such as the Larry W. Hawk Jr. and colleagues in 2015, or the William E. Pelham Jr. and colleagues in 2010, and they found to get very similar results. The children that took the placebo medication had a lower rate of correct answers and therefore a higher rate of error, whereas the children that took the methylphenidate tended to get the answers more correct more often and therefore had a lower error rate, which then tells us that those who took the methylphenidate had a better working memory and were able to recall the answers better than those who had taken the placebo, showing that the stimulant did actually have an impact on the memory, and it wasn't just the children thinking that they had to focus, so they did focus. For the third study, we will be looking at one by Paul T. Rosenow and colleagues in 2021. This study aimed to look at the long-term effects of taking methylphenidate and how it impacted the working memory and other cognitive reactions in children after being on the medication for 2 years prior, and if coming off the medication would decrease these cognitive functions, therefore testing if methylphenidate not only works in the short run but also after an extended period of time. The children that participated in this had to do a memory search task in which they were given boxes with 4 letters and asked to say if the letters they were told were in the box. It did progressively get harder, and they were asked for 2 letters and eventually 3. The children in this study were a range of 8 to 18-year-olds, all with an IQ of at least 70. They were split into 2 groups of 47 randomly, where one was put on a placebo and then taken off the medication, and the other group continued to take their medication as normal. So the method that they used to test memory actually came from the ANT program in a letter detection task used to measure working memory, made in 2003, and was actually revealed that it was effective in improving working memory as well. So with the results for this study, we can see how it affected the children in multiple areas, including their reaction time and error rate for all types of cognitive functions that they tested for. They did mention in the study that though the reaction times were different between the first and second test for both groups, that it wasn't anything notable. However, with the error rate for the discontinuation group, it became much higher, and they were incorrect a lot more after they had come off their medication, whereas the continuation group proceeded to make less errors the second time round, therefore showing that continuing to take the methylphenidate was still beneficial with their working memory, therefore showing that even after 2 years of taking this medication, that it was still effective on working memory in children with ADHD. When discussing the evidence and results of these studies, it is important to note the good factors and the limitations that all of these faced. In the first study, I believe that it was good that they limited comorbid diagnosis to avoid outside factors playing a role such as depression or autism. And I also believe it was good that they had children within the same IQ range to limit outside factors from impacting the potential results. However, the sample size was very small for this one, only coming to 48 kids, 87.5% of which were boys, making it very hard to generalize for the population or kids in general, at least when considering girls. And it also didn't address home life or cultures, making it hard to apply to anyone outside where they grow up on different belief systems and work ethics. For the second study, it did similar things where it limited the comorbid diagnosis and IQ range to avoid outside factors impacting the results. I also believe that using a placebo to test the results gives us a good range of how children function without the medication, what they think they should be doing on the medication, and what actually happens to their brain with medication. And we can see all different results vary, giving us more solid evidence that this stimulus actually does work on the brain. However, once again, the sample size was small, only coming to 35 kids, and 80% of them were boys, once again making it hard to generalize to girls with ADHD and if it would affect them in similar ways. With this one, we actually did get to see some other factors such as cultural life by being told about race. However, it was limited as majority of the study was done on white or Hispanic kids, making it hard to see how it would affect other races such as Asian children, Black children, mixed children, etc. For number three, I like that there was a bigger sample size for this one, coming at 98 kids. And the fact that they mentioned that they randomized the groups was really important, as that leads to less bias when taking the testing. They did the same thing as the other ones where they had an IQ range with the base being at 70. Though, unlike the other ones, didn't mention anything about comorbid diagnosis, so we can't see if other things such as depression or autism may have impacted those results. We also didn't see anything about the gender or race statistics, meaning that it's harder to generalize because we don't know what we're actually dealing with and if we can apply that information to everyone. There were some things that all three tests had in common, which I thought were really good. They were all very recent, meaning that they're easier to apply to children in today's age. They all randomized the test, so when children took it for the second time, they couldn't just memorize what was going to come up because they didn't know it was different to last time. And I think even though one test did have 98 children, they would all benefit from having more children of different genders and different races to be able to generalize all of these studies further. So you can see based on these papers that from one dose to even 2 years of continuously taking methylphenidate, that it does have a benefit to the working memory in children with ADHD. All tests performed showed that children performed better after taking it, and there was a positive impact on cognitive function within the brain. Therefore, coming to the conclusion that for children with ADHD, taking methylphenidate is in fact beneficial to the working memory. Here is my completed reference list, and thank you for watching.